Hello, hello, and welcome back to the Creative Marketing Show. I am your host, Ange. I'm so thrilled you're tuning in today. I have been thinking about this a lot lately, especially coming out of summertime, getting a little bit busier now that fall is here with back to school, sports, activities, family life, just kind of that last quarter of the year. And so if you're like me and it's like, oh, I have so much on the go right now, to be churning out fresh content all the time, obviously it's important. We want to have some visibility. But if you're ever feeling like I just trying to manage all the things, then my hope is that this episode helps take a little bit of that pressure off. So, what I'm going to be talking about today are 3 ways to utilize Instagram stories to continue with your visibility and showing up and serving your audience without that added time of constantly creating new content. So let's jump into today's episode. Okay, so this first one might seem a little bit obvious. I've said it before, but I'm going to say it again because repetition is important. So people remember things that they see on repeat. So I'm going to repeat this message and remind you to go back and repurpose some of your previous posts that you've already shared, especially if it's the same messaging, the same value, the same education, whatever it is that is still of value to your audience, and put that up in stories, especially those weeks. Maybe you've got a ton of orders, you're going into fall or Black Friday, or you're just at your max capacity with your business and your services and your clients. So take some of that information, some of those posts that you already shared, and pop them up into your stories. Again, not everybody is seeing your content. In fact, it's a very, very small piece. Like we're talking under 8% of your followers actually see your content. So they've probably missed it. And if it's really good content, it's probably a good idea to share it again because we constantly need these reminders. So if you want to look back at your insights to see what really performed well, or you can even look at something if you were like, I put a lot of effort into that. I know that this will help someone and maybe it didn't perform well. Again, could be the algorithm, it could have been the time of day you posted, whatever it is, the hashtags, all of that. There's so many things that go into the performance of your posts. So whether you want to look at your insights of one that did really well or just confidently knowing you're like, this is such valuable information, go on up there and add it to your stories. So that's a nice way, especially on the go, to filter through, throw it up in stories. If you want to add a few hashtags, if you want to add a sticker or a poll or a tap here button, anything, but as long as you're getting that information out there, that's a nice one to save time. Now, number 2 is a unique trick that I like to do. Again, to keep stories, I love talking about Instagram stories because to me, Instagram stories is a great way to have repetition, to be visible, to still serve your audience, but without all of the other added things in terms of writing captions, deciding on hashtags, actually creating. And so one of the things that I like to do, and I do this a lot when I share a little bit more of my personal side of things. So maybe there are some things I want to share because I am trying to connect with my audience. And so an example of that would be, I'm a mom, I'm a baseball mom, and I love, coaching my son at baseball. And I think that might resonate with a lot of people. But maybe I don't want to create content revolving around a lot of my personal stuff to have it sit on my profile. I really use my account to serve my audience in terms of marketing strategy, helpful tips, education with a little bit of humor mixed in. So if I don't want it to sit on my feed, but I want to kind of show a little bit more of my personality, I typically do that in stories. And one thing that I love to do is I'll actually create stories in reels. So what do I mean by that? I'll create a reel and I usually like to take little B-roll snippets of kind of things that are happening, in my everyday. Again, if I don't want it to sit on my main feed, it's really quick. And so I'll actually piece it together in reels. But why do I do that? Well, I do that because it just breaks up how stories naturally are. They're usually quick kind of little clips, but I do like showcasing that it's more like where you would view it like a reel. And so what do I mean by that? Transitions, adding text where text can kind of pop up but not be there. You know, when you create a story and the text, you don't have any control over the duration of where that text is. But if you do it in Reels, you do. So I usually like to piece together a quick few snippets of what's going on. Most recently, I shared something, my son and I went apple picking. Again, that doesn't really have anything to do with my business, my audience, and how I can support them. But it does give a little bit of a glimpse that I love supporting local. I love my son. I love to bake. And it was also a little reminder of just taking, time away. I was having a really crummy week. My laptop broke, but I was just kind of highlighting just this moment that I wanted to share. And I don't share a ton of with my son or my family. Again, I don't want it sitting on my account, but it was just a beautiful day. And I had all this gorgeous footage and I was able to tag the local farm that we went to and they shared it, which is kind of fun too. So I pieced it together. I added a few transitions. I added a little bit of text and then I saved it to my camera roll. And then I opened it back up in stories and then I added it right to stories. And then that way I could add my final music. I could add the tag of the farm. I could add a geo tag of where we were. And it looked really beautiful. So I just share that where if you just kind of want to really zhuzh up your stories a little bit, I suggest creating them in Reels, save them to your camera roll, and then add all the other good stuff and share it to your stories. Again, they expire in 24 hours, or you can always add it to your highlight reel as well. Something to think about. I think I come from that perspective just to keep them really fresh and really creative. So I thought I would share that with you. Now, the last thing I'm going to share, of course, showing up and sharing on social media is really important. And stories is still a great way to do that. And if you're ever feeling like, yeah, but I want to keep my engagement up, this is one of my favorite tips or tricks or whatever you want to call it, or strategies, I guess I could say, or tactic. And I'll tell you right now, it works. And this is especially, let's say you do utilize stories a lot, if you love it just as much as I do, and you're sharing constantly, but then you see that kind of dip in views go down. How do we fix that? Number one thing you do, let your stories expire. I'm telling you, try this once and you're going to be like, oh my gosh, it totally worked. I've shared this with other clients before and they've done it and they're like, yep, that worked, that did it. So I do this quite often because I like to share in stories typically every day. Again, it's still a touch point with my audience. I'm not having to constantly churn out all this creative and content, but I'm still showing up, repurposing, sharing new podcast episodes, whatever it is. And so once you let them expire, leave it for 24 hours. So go a whole 24 hours without posting anything to your stories. So it's almost like a little reset. And then when you go to share to stories, this is the biggest piece that if you're listening to anything out of this episode and you really want to keep your engagement up, especially with Instagram stories, this is one thing you're going to want to remember. Put it in your notes, write it down, put it on your whatever. So once you let it expire, after 24 hours, when you're about to share your first story, for one thing, make sure it's a good one. I wouldn't just share just anything very willy-nilly. Maybe it's something you create, whether it's a photo, it's a video of you. But the one thing you're going to want to do is that first story that you're going to put up there, we want an opportunity for your audience to engage with it. Oh, there goes my dog. If you hear her little collar, she's just snuggling up beside me here. So back to the biggest tip. She always distracts me. She's just so cute. So you're going to want to let it expire. The first story you're going to put on, make sure it's of value. But in order to get that engagement up, you have got to add a way for people to engage. A sticker, a poll, one of the little slider bars, anything that's going to get someone to go boop and tap it. Okay. So test this out. Your audience. If they're the question sticker that you can put, if it's a really open-ended question, sometimes people don't have time for that. So if you're like, what are you doing today? Or what do you love? What's your favorite TV show? Again, keep it on brand for your business. And you want to make sure to make it really easy. Think about yourself. If you're like, oh, they asked this really, really crazy, tricky question, what's your biggest flaw? I'm like, okay, I don't have time for this right now. So maybe the question one, I don't usually use the question one as much, just I've tried it. And I find when I use a poll and I give someone an option because they can just quickly tap, you make it really easy. Oh, hang on. Don't end this episode just yet. I have one more extra little tip I'm going to share about the polls. So anything, again, slider, or you can have a little tap sticker. I don't even remember what it's called, but anything that's going to get your audience to tap, because on that first story, and then anything that's going to come subsequent is more likely to get viewed. So if you have a kind of strategy or plan, that first one, you really want to have high value, a way for your audience to engage. But of course, don't just let that fall off, because if they're looking at that first one, try to follow it up with some added content or value. Maybe that's going up to tip number one, and you're going to share something that you've already reposted. And then they can see that, get those Reels views up by sharing it again to your stories. So that is one strategy that I promise you, I mean, I make no guarantees, but I'm pretty sure it's going to work. So I would love for you to try it. And if it does, let me know. Send me a DM on Instagram at angela.s.doyon, D-O-Y-O-N, and let me know if it worked for you, because it's worked for me, it's worked for clients. And so that's a nice way to get that refresh. Okay, I also just promised one extra tip when it comes to polls. So put yourself in your audience position. When you see a poll on Instagram stories, I find that if you put anything really negative, they're less likely to engage, because people know you can see who participates in your poll. So you never want to put anything that's going to make people like, oh, I don't want to participate in this. I don't want them, this is personal. So what I typically do, if I'm just trying to think of an example off the top of my head, if I share something and I'm trying to, maybe it's this tip, maybe I put in, hey, here's a quick tip for you. And in the poll, if I put like, oh, I love that. And then the next one, if it was like, oh, I hated that negative one, if someone doesn't want to participate, they want to have options. So I would put all positive options. So that was awesome. Or, oh my gosh, I love this. And then maybe the third one's like, that is so cool. Like keeping it really positive. So it's basically like giving people an option to participate, and there's no wrong answer, and everything's good vibes. So I'll leave you with that. That's just an extra little tip. So let me know what you think of this episode. I want to know if, especially tip number 3 with letting your Instagram stories expire and then encouraging that engagement with a sticker or a poll or however you use it. Let me know. Again, angela.s.doyon on Instagram. I hope you're enjoying these episodes. If you have been tuning in and you haven't left me a review yet, I would love for you to do so on Apple Podcasts. Let me know what you think. And if you ever have an idea for an upcoming episode, or if you have a specific question that you'd like me to tackle, please let me know through Instagram in my DMs. I am happy to record an episode that can help you with your marketing strategy or balancing life, business, work, family, all of that fun stuff. Otherwise, if you want a little bit more intensive, some more trainings and really good connection and clarity calls, I got you covered with my creative marketing membership. You can join for a month, you can join for 2 months. If it's not a good fit for you, you can cancel anytime. I never want to make people feel really, really stuck, but we have so much fun inside of the community, and we have some amazing trainings coming up with special guest experts. So if you want more details on that and what is coming up inside the membership, visit creativemarketingmembership.com. Otherwise, I will be back next Wednesday with a new episode. See you later, friend, or hear you later, wherever you're tuning in, or if you're watching this on YouTube. Thanks for tuning in. And if you haven't found me on YouTube, go check it out. Okay, bye.